Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today I want to give my ranking of the Diablo IV classes that will be available at launch after playing each and every one of them during the various betas. Now, keeping in mind that your favorite might be at the bottom of the list, but that's fine, it's just my opinion, and I'm ranking it based off of three things personally. One, how much I enjoyed playing the character. Two, how much potential I think long-term the character has for endgame, and three, how viable the character felt during the betas that we played so far. Now, all of this is subject to change. Obviously, once we have the full game, once we get towards endgame, there's going to be a lot of various ways to build all of the different classes. Every one of them is probably going to have meta builds, strong builds, fun builds, all that kind of good stuff. So take this with a grain of salt. This is just how I feel about each and every class after the betas and going into full launch, and which ones I'm going to be playing first and foremost. So jumping right in at number 5 is going to be the Rogue. This is the last class that I played during this open beta, and you're going to see during the server slam me beating a Shavo with him. And overall, it's just not a class for me that I really enjoy. It doesn't have the magic feel, or it doesn't have the big tanky brute feel. Either those are my two preferences when it comes to games like this. And I know I could have built it a little bit different. I was really focused on a long range bow build because I did want to beat the world boss and not just be squishy and die all the time. So because of that, I think that's why I went in the direction that I did. And I know that not everyone's going to agree. There's a lot of potential for this class, but for me, it's the class that I just did not enjoy at all playing personally, and I don't see that changing going forward, because the stealth side, the bow and arrow, those are not the classes that I normally play regardless of the game, so that's probably why this is going to be bottom of my list. Next up is going to be the Barbarian. This one is mostly because it did feel underwhelming when I did get a chance to play it. I know it received some buffs, but for me, there's just a lot of reasons that I'm not really looking forward to playing a melee class to start this game. I think a ranged DPS class is going to be just superior at times. However, I do think there's going to be a role if you're playing co-op for melee classes, and I think the Barbarian, once we get to endgame and you start getting a bunch of different weapons and stuff, could be really sick. But again, it's just not really the class that I'm most excited about, and my major worry for the class is just how much it's going to struggle early in the game compared to the other classes, like how much easier the game is going to feel when you're playing like a Necro or a Sorcerer or something like that. And so that's going to make it so it's going to be a slog to start the game off, and that's not what I want to do. I want to jump right in and really destroy things and have a good time. That's why I'm playing Diablo, especially during the campaign run, right? I don't want that. I want the difficulty to spike in the endgame and not really be frustrating while I'm unlocking all of my various abilities. That's my big fear for the Barbarian personally. At number 3, I'm going to put the Druid. Now, for the same reason that the Barbarian struggles a little bit, the melee, close range type of classes are going to be hard pressed, because it seems like there's a lot more AoE damage over time stuff on the ground, like puddles of various poisons and toxins and stuff. So that reason is a little bit problematic when I'm running a melee character, because I have to be up close all the time. But overall, I like the various stylings of the Druid. I think the class abilities are very cool. I love that I can get a wolf companion. There's a lot more potential for builds that I am excited about with the Druid, and I do think once you get to end game, this will be a class that'll have a lot of variety in build potential as well, between the werebear, werewolf, and all that kind of good stuff. So I think there's going to be some flexibility there, which will be nice, especially if you're able to respec sometimes to change up what you're doing, depending on if you're just farming mobs, if you are taking on bosses and the like. So that's why the Druid is third. I think the Druid will actually be the second character that I play after my number 1 pick, because I'm going to want to have a little bit of variety there. So as I blow through the game on my number 1 pick, then I'm going to probably pick the Druid second, and I think I'm going to really enjoy that as well. And maybe it'll be when Season 1 starts. That's probably when I'll really jump in on the Druid. So next up, we have a character that did get nerfed, and a lot of people are fairly upset about it, is the Necromancer. People are saying that it's too squishy, it's too weak. I think that's just because of how strong it was during the first beta. But I do think overall the Necromancer is still going to be very, very good, very viable. I think the potential for it is going to be insane. And even if it's a little underwhelming at first, I know they'll buff it. It's a class that's much easier to buff up than something like a Barbarian is, in my opinion. The Necromancer, I think, is going to be a ton of fun. There's going to be a lot of different builds. You can do corpse builds, you can just minion builds, and stuff like that. The corpse explosion builds I know were very strong during the second beta when it was available, but overall I just enjoyed playing sorcerer more, right? I think the Necromancer is a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it, but for me, the variety that I had with the sorcerer, I feel like I rebuilt it over the course of my playtime, and it was the character that, even though I'd hit max level, I most wanted to grind for gear with, and that's why it tops my list. I was very excited to play. I think the potential for it to be very strong is there. It already is very strong during the betas, and even during this beta, it didn't feel like it got hit nearly as hard as the Necromancer comparatively. So because of that, this is number one on my list. I think it's going to be the number one class that I'm going to play jumping into full launch just a couple weeks, which I am absolutely thrilled about. And overall, I think at the end of the day, play the character that you enjoy the most. If you build out these characters, I guarantee you're going to be able to beat everything in the game eventually, right? Maybe some things will be faster, maybe some things will be a little slower, but if you have a character that you really enjoy, you have a class that is your absolute favorite, do not hesitate jumping in on that class and having a good time with it, because I think there's so much potential for the classes to be all very, very good in their own right. And I'm really excited personally to see how the end game builds work when we do have all the classes unlocked and we have all these late game items and relics and all this kind of stuff that's really going to juice up our builds. So for that reason, I think I'm excited about all five. I'm going to probably eventually play all five, but it really depends on how the grind gets once we get to the end game, and whether I can just farm things and get my builds to the place that I want to get them. And the order that I probably take them on is going to be Sorcerer, Druid, and then Necro, Barbarian, and then Rogue. That's probably the order that I'll do them. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. What's your rankings of the 5 classes in the game so far? What are you most excited to jump in and play? Have you pre-ordered? Are you ready for launch just as I am? Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more content like this from me going forward. My name is JoPa. I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.